Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Slauson. So I am going to be out today, possibly Thursday. I think I just kind of have to wait and see. Anyway, you should have in front of you right now, based on the piece of paper given to you by the sub, page 26 from your notes. And the main thing I want you to go from this page is Pythagorean theorem. And Pythagorean, if you remember, is based off of a right triangle. And we have three letters, A, B, and C. A and B are the legs of the triangle. And then the hypotenuse, the longest side, is known as C, and that side is always opposite the right angle. And then from there, we have Pythagorean theorem. The other formula I need for you to remember from last time we were together is the distance formula. So instead of using Pythagorean theorem, there's a modified version of it, and I kind of showed you how that looked. Called the distance formula. So we're going to have dB distance, and we're going to have a big square root and two sets of parentheses, and one of them we're going to subtract our x values and square them. And then we're going to have another set of parentheses for the y values and square that, and then there's a plus sign in between. So note where the subtraction signs are and the plus signs. So if you didn't get those, just get them written down now, and if you have them written down, maybe just double check that they are correct. So from there, you should be looking at this distance and midpoint page. And your goal is to spend about 30 minutes on this. You're going to see that the answers are provided for you. And I would like for you to have a calculator because we're going to practice typing in square roots as well. And I'm not going to be doing this whole thing with you, but I will definitely hit a little bit of everything, so to help you get started. So just the first thing it says is please read everything before you begin. And just when we do work with the graph, you're going to need to draw on your right triangle. So from the lower point, draw in a rise and run to get to the upper point. So what that means is if I look at number 3, I'm going to rise, and then I'm going to run this way. And then if I want, I can put in my box, and I have made that right triangle. The answers have been provided for you again, just so you can see how you're doing. And if you don't get those answers, please check with the sub to see where your work went wrong, because the substitute will have a worked out answer key for you as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So since I got number 3 going, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. So for a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I need to know my side length. So this side length has a length of 3, and I can count that based on my graph. And then this one has a length of 5. So those will be my A and B, and my goal is to figure out what the C is, what the length is from one point to another point of the original segment that was there. So I'm going to do in parentheses, you should get used to that, 3 squared plus 5 squared. And that equals c squared. And the reason we're going to put these numbers in parentheses is because if you don't type things correctly into your calculator, you might get the wrong answer. And I showed you that last week as well. But anyway, as far as solving goes, or simplifying this up, I want to take 3 squared. 3 times 3 is 9. Feel free to have a calculator help you out. 5 squared, which is 25. Notice I'm keeping my numbers on the left side of the equal sign, my c squared on the right side of the equal sign. I'm going to add those up. And now to solve for c, I need to get rid of that square root. And we talked about last week, you can do that by using a square root. That check mark will basically cancel out that squared. So now that c is alone on the right side. And then whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. And so we're going to get the square root of 34. Now this is a really good answer, but it probably doesn't make a lot of sense in your head. So one thing you can do then is get your calculator, and we can type in the square root of 34 and get that decimal. And remember, we're going to write 3 numbers behind the decimal. We're going to round. That's what your chemistry teachers like. So I hit the second button, then I hit that x squared button. I'll put in my 34, and I get my 3 decimals of, oh, it just disappeared, 5.831 if I round. So again, the square root of 34 is great. I think most of us, this decimal number will make sense. And if you think about it, if C is supposed to be the longest side, it should be more than 3 and 5. So let's take a look at number 4, for instance. This time I want to use the distance formula. So for the distance formula, I'm not going to draw in my rise over run. What I really need are these coordinates. So this one over here is -4, 2, and this one over here is 3, 0. And this one is x, and that's y, and this is x, and that's y. And now what I can do to find the distance of that segment is I'm going to make a big check mark, and I'm going to put parentheses squared plus another parentheses squared, and in one set I'll put the x's and in the other I'll put the y. So at this point I just kind of have to decide how I want to subtract. And remember, you can always pause these videos. All right, let's start with this. So I have to decide with my x's, do I want to do -4 take away 3 or 3 take away -4? So I'm just going to do oops, that's the highlighter, -4 take away 3. And then when I go for my y values, so the 2 and 0, do I want to do 2 take away 0 or 0 take away 2? And I prefer to do 2 take away 0. So from there, I want to use my order of operations. I'm going to start with my parentheses, so -4, and then I take away 3 more is -7. And then 2 take away 0 is 2. Notice I'm keeping everything in parentheses. That check mark is still coming along. After that, I want to square both numbers. So -7 squared, -7 times -7 is 49. If you're going to type it into your calculator, you need to put that -7 in parentheses. And then 2 squared is 4. Keep that check mark going. And then once I add them up, I get 53, just like they had over here. Now, the decimal version, I'll just take the square root of 53, so second x squared, type in my 53, and I'll write down the first 3 numbers and round, so 7.280. All right, so again, this square root of 53 is the preferred answer, but I think this number makes a little more sense in our heads. So when you do 2 or 5, I'd suggest you try Pythagorean theorem for one, and do the distance formula for the other. So pause the video, try those, and then when you're done, let's start the video back up and we'll take it down here. So on the next section, you are going to be specifically using Pythagorean theorem. And the reason we're going to do this is because a lot of times we're very quick to put where we should put our numbers. We always want to put numbers in the place of A and B. But sometimes I'm going to give you C, and you just have to realize that C is the hypotenuse. So if you notice, anything that I highlighted, that is what would go in for my C squared. So let's start with number 6, and my side lengths for the A and B are going to be 7 and then this x. So I'll put 7 squared. This is for number 6. Actually, maybe I'll put it over here. 7 squared plus the other side squared, so x squared equals my hypotenuse, which is 12 squared. Again, notice I'm putting these in parentheses. And then I want to start simplifying, so I will get rid of my exponents in parentheses. 7 squared is 49. X squared is just the way it is. 12 squared, 12 times 12 is 144. And so now, to start solving for x, I'm going to move that 49 over. I'm going to isolate my x. So when I do that, I now have x squared, and on the right side I have 95, and then just like before, to get rid of the squared, I want to square root. So if I square root the left side, that check mark is going to cancel out my squared, and then I'm going to square root the right side, and I will get that x now is the square root of 95, which is a great answer for number 6. But again, that decimal value, if I just hit second and x squared and type in my 95, then I'll see it's 9.747 if I round. So 9.747 if I round. So this is really great. This is all for number 6, and this is really great. So this is my x. All right, I will let you try 7, 8, and 9. Pythagorean theorem should be review for you, but again, just be really careful that you're noting the hypotenuse. On my last two problems, you will specifically be using the distance formula, so just practicing that one more time. So just a reminder, this is an x and a y, this is an x and a y, and when you go for this, parentheses, the first set will be devoted for your x, and the second set will be devoted for your y. So just decide how you want to subtract. So for instance, if I was going for my x's right now, I would probably do the 1 take away 0, and then I'll let you decide how you want to subtract your y's. So that's our first video. You go ahead and keep this going, and again, no more than 30 minutes on this. At this point, since we did quite a few problems, I would actually probably just take it down to about 20 minutes now, because this video is about 10 minutes, and I don't want this page, including the video, to be more than 30 minutes. So set a timer, 20 minutes, then stop and move on to the next video.